8 years ago, as a fresh-faced new addition to the team, I pitched a video called "What is a Species?" My coworkers immediately started laughing at me. We love making videos about categories like trees or moons because they have a straightforward, universally agreed-upon starting definition. We can establish a baseline before exploring the weird exceptions. But species are different. Usually, we can agree on where a category begins, but here, even the starting line is a point of contention. This flowchart illustrates the most famous attempt at a baseline, proposed by biologist Ernst Mayr in the mid-1900s. His rule was reproductive isolation. Species are groups that interbreed with themselves, but hit a hard boundary and don't have babies with outside groups. It's a neat, logical box, exactly the kind of rigid boundary humans want biology to have. But nature rarely follows our instructions. In practice, it's almost impossible to actually observe wild animal populations closely enough to prove they are strictly reproductively isolated. Instead, scientists have to rely on other metrics. This scatter plot shows how a single organism can be pulled into a dozen different conflicting buckets, depending on whether you prioritize its physical appearance, its genetic code, or its evolutionary history. And then there are plants. They frequently engage in polyploidy, which is when an organism literally doubles its entire genome during reproduction. Looking at this genetic sequence, a plant duplicates its DNA and instantly generates a totally new, incompatible barrier from its parent sequence, creating a new species in a single generation. These sudden genetic leaps destroy the idea of neat, gradual evolutionary boundaries that scientists usually rely on. I eventually abandoned the plants and tried again with a new pitch. I'd focus on one of the most famous examples of the speciation debate, the red wolf. This Venn diagram shows one theory. The red wolf is simply a modern hybrid where coyotes and gray wolves overlap. Or, as this timeline shows, it could be a ghost lineage, an ancient extinct species replaced by a newer hybrid. This leads to a circular logic problem. If coyotes and gray wolves can interbreed to produce red wolves, why do we call coyotes and gray wolves separate species in the first place? Every time I tried to write the story, a new academic paper would come out supporting a different side, making my script obsolete before I could even finish it. Hybridization suggests that biological borders are more like porous suggestions than solid walls. For my third pitch, I tried zooming in. I'd look at subspecies, specifically how we lump Bengal and Siberian tigers together. Since these tigers can produce fertile offspring, the standard logic says they should be lumped into one group rather than separated. But even that logic is unstable. This map shows how the consensus bounces between recognizing 2 large geographic tiger regions and 9 smaller overlapping ones. Scientists can't agree on whether to define these groups by their physical geography or by minute differences in their DNA. And plants make it even worse, breaking categories down into varieties, subvarieties, forms, and subforms. The closer we zoom in to solve the problem, the more fragmented the data becomes. My script eventually spiraled into an absurd mess involving an island full of gremlins, an earthquake, and a subplot about human genetics. My teammates eventually staged an intervention and made me give it up. But then I realized that the very thing making the script impossible, the fact that we can't cleanly define a species, was actually the story we needed to tell. As it turns out, I wasn't the only one stuck on this. We recently hired a new writer, Cameron, and his very first pitch was for the exact same title. Our drive to categorize life is a human compulsion, but the messy, unboxable reality of nature is actual biology. This specific topic took 8 years to crack, but even our normal videos require a massive amount of work. Looking at our data, we found that it takes roughly 250 hours of work to put a single video out into the world. This timeline breaks that down, from the initial research and pitching to the writing, storyboarding, and final illustrations, not to mention all the ideas that end up in the bin. Making these videos rigorous and keeping them free is a significant undertaking that relies entirely on viewer support. If you join our Patreon community at the $6 a month tier or higher, we'll even draw you as a stick figure with your favorite hobby. Supporting us at patreon.com/MinuteEarth helps us continue this chaotic, deeply researched journey.